Hey y'all, it's Ryan, and I am so excited to talk to you today about an important paper that I was a co-author on, which was led by our incredible postdoc, Dr. Angie Leroy, who's been a guest on this channel before. And we also collaborated with Dr. Raymond Stowe, who's previously studied how microgravity in space affects the reactivation of latent viruses in astronauts for NASA, or as my brother calls it, space herpes. So this will be building on last week's video as we talk more about how close relationships affect our health, but focus specifically on how the loss of a close relationship may affect Epstein-Barr virus latency and somatic symptoms based on the quality of that past relationship. Okay, so there's gonna be a lot going on here, but I'll break down each piece for you and let me know in the comments if you have any other questions or want anything addressed that I don't address here. First, what is Epstein-Barr virus? Epstein-Barr virus is a herpes virus, and so when we get infected with a herpes virus, it can cause this latent infection, which remains hidden until the immunological circumstances are perfect or ripe for the development or the manifestation of symptoms. Let me say that another way. So when we get infected with a herpes virus, we have it for the rest of our life, but it isn't always necessarily causing visible symptoms until that latent herpes virus is reactivated and begins replicating. And the virus can do this because Epstein-Barr virus becomes part of the host's genome. So we assess Epstein-Barr virus in these kinds of studies by examining how many antibody titers, EBV antibody titers specifically, there are in a person's blood. And more antibody titers indicate poorer cellular immune control and an increased likelihood of someone experiencing symptoms. So there are multiple culprits that can contribute to the reactivation of latent herpes viruses. So of course we have to make sure to control for anything that isn't our primary variable of interest. The first is age. As we age, there are natural increases in Epstein-Barr virus antibody titers, and this indicates that our cellular immune system isn't able to maintain quite as much control over the virus as it used to be. So EBV antibody titers represent another way, besides anything to do with cytokines or inflammation, that we can track immune dysregulation. Outside of aging, psychological stress can also compromise our cellular immune system's capacity such that we have less control over the latent virus. So as an example, think about the cold sore that people get on their lips from oral herpes virus or herpes simplex virus 1. And cold sores aren't always there, right? And so many people have HSV1, about half of the people who are between ages 14 and 49 in the US, and even more by older adulthood, right? But people don't always have visible symptoms like cold sores, right? So second big overview piece is what are some of the consequences of EBV reactivation? One of them is somatic symptoms. And some examples of somatic symptoms are headaches or numbness or tingling in parts of your body. So in this study, we asked, what determined the relationship between the level of EBV antibody titers and the number of somatic symptoms that a person reports? So we might think that more antibody titers equals more symptoms, right? But that hasn't always been the case. So this suggests that we don't completely understand who has or will have worse consequences when EBV is recklessly replicating, right? So there's been conflicting evidence about this and about how EBV relates to somatic symptoms. So for example, no relationship in adolescence, but no one has examined this question after the death of a spouse before we ran this study. So the third big piece is our target population. So why do we focus on bereavement? We focus on the time after the death of a spouse for several different reasons. One, it's a highly stressful life event. Two, the end of a relationship has been associated with elevated Epstein-Barr virus antibody titers in past studies. And three, bereaved people often do experience somatic symptoms in the first 6 months after the death of their spouse. So this might potentially or partially explain why. Finally, the last big overview piece is sort of understanding what might determine who, within this bereaved sample, does have a positive relationship, so when one increases, so does the other, between Epstein-Barr virus antibody titers and somatic symptoms. So we hypothesize that the extent to which that surviving spouse is impacted by the death of their spouse might depend on specific factors related to their past relationship. So here we examined whether retrospective, looking backward, relationship satisfaction determined the association between Epstein-Barr virus antibody titers and reports of somatic symptoms. So So said another way, we thought the people who were more satisfied in the relationship that they just lost would experience more somatic symptoms relative to their EBV antibody titers than people who weren't as satisfied in that past relationship. To test this, we brought 101 bereaved spouses into the lab who had lost their spouse no more than 14 weeks earlier than their visit with us. We also made sure that all of them were Epstein-Barr virus seropositive, which indicates that they have in fact been infected with EBV, right? That matters. And so we removed 2 participants from our analysis who were seronegative for a final sample of 99 bereaved older adults. And the participants came to our lab for about a 3-hour-long visit where we asked them lots of questions, drew their blood, and took lots of measurements. And we found some really cool results. Overall, EBV antibody titers were positively associated with somatic symptoms in this sample. But when we broke down this whole part, it got a lot cooler. Only people who reported average to high levels of relationship satisfaction with their spouse reported experiencing somatic symptoms. For people who were less satisfied in their past relationship, there wasn't a statistically significant association between Epstein-Barr virus, antibody titers, and somatic symptoms. This means that the consequences of herpes virus reactivation on people's health during spousal bereavement depended on the quality of their former relationship. So sadly, for physical health during spousal bereavement, that persistent sentiment that the more you love, the more you lose might actually ring true. All right, y'all, that's all for today. Thanks for stopping by, and please click like or subscribe for more content like this.